Check, check, hello, check. to call the first meeting to order, and we'll have roll call. Ms. Ehlers? Okay. Mr. Johnson's absent, and Berlin Terry, I'm present, so we have a quorum. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now have a public hearing on the 2023 proposed tax rate.
Good evening, Mrs. Terry and Mrs. Ehlers. Tonight, for our public hearing for the 2023 proposed tax rate, we have Dr. Stacy Parker.
Good evening, Board Member Terry, Ms. Ehlers, Superintendent Henson. So as we know, the tax rate for school districts play a crucial role in determining the resources available for education. This rate impacts the educational opportunities by ensuring adequate funding to support our district initiatives are in place. And so tonight I bring to you the 2023 proposed tax rate. We have a compressed rate, a new rate for our maintenance and operations of 0.74 cents, so 0.74770 cents, which is compressed from last year's rate of approximately 93 cents. We did have to factor in this year interest and sinking because we did pass a bond, we'll begin paying our on our bond debt in February of this school year, and so that is at a rate of 47 cents. So our total tax rate is $1.21. Are there any questions? Okay. And that concludes that presentation.
And Mrs. Terry, members of the board, I do want to present as well that this is lower than the proposed tax rate of what we were thinking as it relates to our new bond. So it is actually 19 cents lower, and that'll all be to the benefit of our taxpayers and to our community. So we're definitely very thankful to be in a position that we're in to still, despite on one side raising taxes, having the ability to lower taxes and still be able to maintain the operations of the Marlin Independent School District. And this does conclude the public hearing.
Okay, are there any public comments or questions concerning the budget and the proposed tax rate?
There were none posted.
Okay. Anyone here with questions? If not, we'll adjourn this meeting at 5:07. And we'll move on to the next meeting that we'll call to order, and I'll do the roll call one more time. Ms. Ehlers? Present. Okay, Mr. Johnson, absent, and Berlin Terry, present. And we will skip over the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silence and go on to public comments from anyone, please.
There were none posted online.
Okay, thank you. I want to go to recognitions. Dr. Parker, please.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening again, board members, Dr. Henson. So tonight, first, we want to talk about our Lone Star Governance Student of the Month. He's a fifth grader at Marlin Elementary School, Christian Cabrera. Christian is a great fifth grader at Marlin Elementary. Christian is the oldest, and he has one sister. He is 10 years old, and he wanted us to know his birthday is July 2nd, so happy belated birthday, Christian. He likes to watch YouTube videos about engineering, playing video games, and watching WWE. He also likes to spend time with his family and friends. Christian is a very respectful student and is always willing to help out his friends when they are struggling in math. His superhero is his dad because they spend a lot of time together and they have many things in common like watching wrestling. His hobbies are going to church on Wednesdays, helping his grandmother, and soccer practice. Christian wants to go to college to become a computer engineer. Please again join us in congratulating Christian Cabrera.
Congratulations.
Come over here so we can take a cute picture with you. Thank you. Next, we have our Lone Star Governance Teacher of the Month, Deidre Jefferson. As a dedicated and dynamic educator, Mr. Jefferson is thrilled to be embarking on his second year of teaching excellence. His journey is in the realm of education has been a rewarding and transformative experience, allowing him to connect with students on a personal level and foster their growth academically, socially, and emotionally. His background is that he holds a bachelor's degree from Prairie View A&M, where he developed a strong foundation in teaching and a deep understanding of effective pedagogical practices. I see you wrote this, Mr. Jeff. This knowledge has guided him in creating engaging lesson plans that cater to diverse learning styles and to encourage critical thinking. He has a teaching philosophy. He believes at heart that his teaching philosophy is the belief that every student possesses a unique brilliance waiting to be ignited. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Deidre Jefferson. So this month is special. We have 2 Employee of the Months that we want to celebrate. So first, this Employee of the Month is a proud native of Marlin and has been on staff for 24 years. She is a wife and mother, but wanted to highlight that she is also a Mimi to a cute little kindergartner over at our Marlin Elementary School campus. Mrs. Keisha Watson-Womack is a wonderful person. I just love her. I don't even want to have to go beyond. She's always willing to help. She's always willing to go the extra mile. And I love how she comes and makes sure that I embrace many of my new positions this year. So this month's Employee of the Month #1, Miss Keisha Womack. Once again, our next Employee of the Month. We've all heard the saying, the roof is on fire. But this time, the roof actually wasn't on fire, but thanks to this Employee of the Month, he came to our rescue, made sure all of our students, our staff was safe when we thought we had a little faux pas in the kitchen a week or so ago. Mr. Eddie Peel, he is a native of Marlin. He is a proud Marlin graduate. I'm not going to air his business, but he is a father and grandfather of many of our wonderful students. And in his spare time, he loves to watch old TV shows and care for horses and all of his animals. Please welcome our Employee of the Month, Eddie Peel. Don't worry about it. Here, get this.
So appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Sections 551.074, deliberation of personnel matters, will go into closed session at 5:14. back in session at 5:43, and the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board. Tonight, we will begin with the Bond 2022 update.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson, district continues to have meaningful conversations with all of our stakeholders and vendors just to ensure successful project delivery on all of our bond projects. Our next bond advisory meeting will be Monday, September 11th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Learning Center. A few updates for our bond projects, Legion Field. The turf did arrive on August the 15th, and the turf installation started on August the 17th. A few updates from our bond advisory meeting. We still continue to have productive conversations regarding the start of the construction and renovation at Legion at Marlin High School. Update on Marlin High School Phase 1. Based off the feedback we have received from the community, renovations of our current gym will begin soon at Marlin High School. Few updates from the construction at Legion Field. As you can see, that nice custom purple, the Marlin Bulldog purple, is now at Legion Field, laid on the ground. So definitely excited about the turf installation. Just another picture from the stands of our construction work at Legion Field. So definitely a lot of progress being made at Legion Field, and we are very hopeful of the end date for that project and be ready for the September 1 game. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Next week.
So the
I mean,
anticipation is for
Our
us
first
to be
game.
complete by September 1st, the Mark game.
Then they'll start working on the press box after the season.
Yes, sir. Once we're done with football season, then you'll start seeing the work for the press box. Yes, sir.
And Board President Johnson, members of the board, once again, I would like to always thank the community for their vote and the opportunity for us to give this to our student athletes. It's a phenomenal day when you see turf with custom purple, costs a little extra, being laid here in Marlin, Texas. Next, we will have the 2022-2023 STAR end of course preliminary data by Mrs. Nikki Edwards.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson. Albert Einstein said the measure of intelligence is in our ability to adapt to change. And if that is true, then TEA has put us in a situation where we will be brilliant within the next couple of years. They stay giving us change and hoops for us to jump through. So they did redesign the STAR this year when we administered it in the previous, the 2022-2023 school year. I do want to go over a couple things prior to showing you the data. So some of the redesign components were, of course, we shifted to a completely online testing. There were new question types that included hotspots, drop downs, fill in the blank, matching, graphing, to name a few. We also had cross-curricular passages. So on RLA, you had passages that were deep in science and, social studies content, which of course you know, reading comprehension is linked to background knowledge. And there was evidence-based writing across all exams except for mathematics. So this was the first time that we had writing on all tests, including social studies and science, and in RLA tests in addition to 7th grade English 1 and English 2. They also redesigned new accountability calculations. And so right now they are still kind of going back and forth with how they are going to measure growth. Are students going to get points for being high passers, low passers, high failures, low failures? And so once you will not see the growth in the slides that I have up and coming because they are still calculating those and we have not received those yet. So while we are doing a two-year comparison from last year to this year, you will see that red line. And the reason why there is a red line there is because it is a different test. It's different students and it is different tests. Like I said, online, and it's completely redesigned. And so you see the performance in certain areas did increase, while in other areas it may have been stagnant or even decreased. This is for our reading, and so again, writing was added to all of these exams. If you look at our meets and masters comparisons as well, you do see some growth in some areas and some decline in other areas. However, we are fully aware now of how to support our students with the balanced literacy for this upcoming change in testing. This I am especially proud of because while the last slides did show an apples to oranges comparison, while this is kind of apples to orange-ish because the test did change, it is more apples to apples in that we're looking at the same group of students. So how did our students do in 2022 as a 7th grader versus how did they do in 2023 as an 8th grader? And so you see green in the majority of the areas, which means in front of us, our students grew under our tutelage, even though the test was different, even though the test was harder. And that's why you see we highlighted green on that 61 to 61 because there was an addition of writing, there was addition to the online component, and there was the short constructed responses that students were responsible for. Moving on to math, here are our two-year,
Board
year-to-year
President
comparisons.
Johnson, members of the board, Ms. Edwards, can you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
So once again, when you're doing the apples to apple-ish comparison, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 areas to compare the same students. Marlin ISD grew in 5 out of the 7 areas. Academic expectations and excellence will continue to be the standard. A test in a new year where a lot of the state went backwards. But in Marlin ISD, where our children have been told for decades that they cannot learn, are continuing to show massive amounts of growth on a new test that we know was more rigorous. So I have to always commend our teachers, our students, and our parents for sending their child to school every single day and ultimately keeping the main thing the main thing. There's not going to be many school districts that can show growth in 5 out of 7 areas. And it's something that we have to make sure that we pat ourselves on the back for in this district. What we're doing is working. Everyone might not always understand the process, but we sure love the results. The golden standard.
Here are our math meets and masters numbers. And again, you'll see increases in areas. Ooh, look at that 7th grade year-to-year comparison. Who was the 7th grade teacher, Dr. Henson? Do you remember? I don't remember either. Oh, okay. For like 1/3 of the kids. However, yet again, you'll see our 2-year cohort comparison, and you see climbs in 4 out of 6 of the areas, and so extremely proud of that, especially, I don't know if you remember, when I've stood up here with 7th grade, 8th grade math last year, and just talked about we were struggling. And I told y'all when I come back up here, we are going to do better. And so we pulled those kids in, and they had a significant 17-point jump. So very, very, very proud of our current 9th graders. And
Board President Johnson, members of the board, so in the test in which you can compare, and Ms. Richardson, front page on this one, Marlin ISD grew in 9 out of 13 areas. 9 out of 13. That's 75% or higher. So we have to continue to show the accolade and the praise for our students. Their brains are rich. Their brains are powerful. And sometimes they push back against us. But when it's time to perform, they perform across the board in reading and mathematics. And I can't be prouder of them knowing that this time the test was online. It was computerized. You had to use scratch paper instead of writing on the booklet. Our students are savvy with cell phones and iPads and tablets.
And social media.
And social media, exactly, yes ma'am. But to once again see what they can do and what they were able to learn from our teachers, 4 out of 6 in math, 5 out of 7 in reading, 9 out of 13 overall. this is something we're celebrating academically in the Maryland Independent School District. Will this make the news tonight? More than likely, no. But we have to always encourage ourselves in this community and in this district that what we're doing academically is working. And I'm proud to be an educator in this district, and I'm proud to work amongst great educators, teachers, and leaders.
And since he gave me the opportunity to brag again, since her sister is in here too, if you see those 5th grade numbers with that, and Eula Mae Jones, you've seen me talk about her a million times, but look at that 49 to 76. That's humongous. We do have our science and social studies comparison, and we did have declines in this area. Now, a lot of this was due to our master schedule structure last year. If you remember, because of our teacher shortage, we did have administrators in the classroom, and because of that, we had an every other day model, not for math or reading, but because of that, we did have to have an every other day model for science and social studies, and we took a hit with that. That has since been alleviated, and we're back to social studies and science every single day. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Next, we will have the value funding lag for school financial integrity rating system of Texas by Dr. Stacy Parker.
Good evening again, Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson. So in Texas, we know that education funding primarily comes from a combination of our local and state revenue. And then that state funding is provided to kind of supplement the local funding to ensure that funding is more equitable across the districts, school districts in our state. So prior to House Bill 3 being passed in the 2019-2020 school year, state funding was actually being based on prior year local tax values. And so as a result, that created what was called a value lag. And so that's been since remedied with House Bill 3, but we're still catching up. And so the state funding is now based on current year values, and eventually as we move forward, that value lag will not be there, but we're still just reporting that for that understanding. If you see any lag prior to that, it was due to this, and the state has made that correction with House Bill 3. Any questions?
Moving on to the consent agenda, the 2023 proposed tax rate adoption.
So as I shared earlier, we were able to adopt a new rate, and I'm seeking board approval tonight to adopt this rate. The maintenance and operations rate has been compressed and reduced from 93 cents to 74 cents. We do have to factor in our 47 cents for our interest and sinking, which will be utilized to pay on our bond debt beginning in February. This brings a total to approximately $1.21, but as Dr. Henson did state earlier during the public hearing, is that still is a reduction of 19 cents of what was originally anticipated. So someone not of as big of an increase as was initially implicated to our taxpayers. Any question? Sir?
About the, yes, sir, Board President Johnson and members of the board. So right now, Maryland has 2 tax buckets. We have the maintenance and operations and the interest and sinking. The plan was to maintain our maintenance and operations while we raise the interest and sinking to be able to pay back the bond debt. Knowing that the values of homes are rising, how can we still alleviate some of that tax burden on our community? So we lowered one side while maintaining the other side. So it is a benefit right now living here in the state of Texas, because if the values of your home have risen, if we can still lower our tax rate and receive appropriate revenue to operate the district, then that's what we'll do to help, once again, alleviate some of the financial burden on our families. So kind of like during all the bond conversations, we really want to make sure that we spoke on the most, for lack of a better phrase, conservative or worst case scenario. And then now that we're here in all actuality, we have a situation where we have a lower tax rate, than what was presented to our community. So I'm excited that we have the opportunity to do this here in Marlin ISD and of course also across the state of Texas.
Thank you. So being fiscally responsible requires careful budgeting, transparent financial management, and a focus on maximizing our educational outcomes while minimizing waste. And so I present to you our July 2023 financial report, beginning with our general fund, knowing that July is the beginning of our fiscal year. You'll see lower than normal expenditures because we don't have students in the building and we're still preparing for the new school year. But as always, maintenance and operations take a good piece of our budget a month just to keep the lights on and things operating smoothly. So we are net for our revenue, based on our revenue and our expenditures, we are to the good this month with our budgeting. Same thing for food services. We've received a small portion of revenue in. We've had very minimal expenditures out in July, and so we are still to the good for the month of July in food services as well. Interest in sinking, we are not generating anything that we get from the interest in sinking at this point, or just collections on old debt that may come in, and so that's not a consistent, actually predictable number. We just reported here, so we did receive $329 in the month of July. We did not have any debt payments, so we didn't have anything going out. And for our construction account, one of the things I want to note here is this is strictly just a report of comparing revenue versus expenditures, but we are not in the negative here. We operate and hold much of our construction funds in our tax pool accounts, as you'll see on our investment report. And when we hold it there, as we have construction projects that we're paying for, we move the money over. We do that so that we could collect at a high interest rate, to collect interest, to get some of those added bells and whistles by growing our money there. So it's not negative. We're very much to the good with our construction funds. And then you'll see, and you can see it more closely in your board packet, as we think fiscally responsibly about our funds and how to maximize. We do have several investment accounts now, one tax pool, so we do have a pocket of our local maintenance income revenue, in tax pool to gain interest. So that's a little over $3 million, and it continues to gain a good amount of interest monthly. We also have our tax pool construction account that I explained to you just prior. We have the money for our high school proposition in a Lone Star account, because we have to maintain two separate accounts because that interest has to be lumped with that fund. So we did break apart Legion Field and the high school. You'll also see Fidelity. Part of that is, again, growing. We know that there are a lot of things that the community is asking for as it relates to the high school, and we're trying our best in this market and kind of just gauging prices of what we may need to complete those projects. So we have also invested funds there to grow over a 12-month period so that we have even more interest to do furniture fixtures and other items that are needed. And then you'll see our revenue in our Cadence Bank accounts, money market, and our general accounts. In your board package, you also have a complete monthly report of our check registry. This is just a snippet here for your view to just show out some of the checks that have gone out in the month of July. And are there any questions? February 2024. Yes, ma'am. So school districts' insurance coverage is of paramount importance for many, many reasons. Some that includes risk mitigation, financial protection, and asset and liability protection. So tonight, Board, I present to you our PCAT insurance renewal for your consent. We are continuing with our same provider, and just some of the summaries of updates that they just included new verbiage around some of the vacant buildings that are excluded, some of our new properties like the MAC that's been included. And so with not only some of our adjustments in our policies and the current trend where insurance rates across the state are just going out of the roof, I did talk and was able to get us within a reasonable increase from our prior year, but that contract is at $396,500, and we're asking for consent to proceed to maintain our coverage effective September 1st. Any questions? So right now, because we are actively still have our DAEP students over there, and we're going to have construction going on there, we need to ensure that building and keep that, but we did remove the Coleman address because we're not occupying that. So that was able to give us about $11,000 in savings there. And then we took some of our older vehicles, older than 2017, that had coverage that was not needed, looked at that and got it the coverage that's needed to maintain for damages, and that took off another $8,000. So we were able to save close to $20,000 with the initial and you'll see in there, the initial quote was for $415,000, and with these adjustments and talking to the insurance agent, he did an amendment and came back with that number. But I've talked to other providers throughout the state just to gauge, and if that's, it's trending upward. Yes. Thank you.
Next, we'll have the CSP vendor selection for maintenance and transportation operations facility construction services.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson, our maintenance and transportation facilities are outdated and inefficient. We need adequate storage and protection for our COVID supplies. It is now time for a new maintenance and transportation operations facility. A CSP was released on July the 3rd, seeking proposals to provide construction services for the new maintenance and transportation operations facility. The picture on the top is a rendering of where the new building will sit, and the bottom pictures are just current pictures of our bus barn facility. The scope of work for the construction is an office building, office space, storage for the COVID storage area, covered parking, and then appropriate heating and cooling. We released the CSP July 3rd, and we are here now today, August 21st, asking for approval to move forward with this vendor. The vendor that was selected is Dynamic Trades. They were founded in 2006, full construction services. They have experience in Texas, and they also have experience with commercial industrial experience. Are there any questions? Moving forward with the purchase part of this presentation, it's the same vendor, maintenance and transportation operations facility. We are here asking to move forward with this purchase, all construction work for the new MTOF. The cost for this project is $1,060,192. And again, the vendor is Dynamic Trades. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Very important consent agenda item, the purchase from Johnson's Heating and Air and Electrical from Dr. Stacy Parker Knight.
And it needs no introduction because you all are very hot, and so am I. And so tonight, I am asking for consent. We did price out the units, so here in the Learning Center, as well as in the middle school practice gym, we did receive a quote from Johnson's Heating, Air, and Electrical, and would like to ask your consent to move forward with those units for $27,750. Any question? Okay, yes, I know everyone say yes, yes.
Board President Johnson, member
Dr.
of the
Henson.
board, and Dr. Parker Can you speak about the update as it relates to new HVAC units in that process, supply chain for the Learning Center at the high school, everything that you and Vince have spoken about?
Yes, so one of the reasons we have been actively seeking a resolution to get the air on as quickly as possible. Two factors is that some places it feel like the units are out and they're not actually out. The units are designed to operate with a max temp outside of 96. So when it's at the 110 for 2 months in a row, it's kind of weighing on the systems. With the actual units that are out here in the practice gym, there is still supply chain issues where there's wait time on parts. So Vince and his team have been working really hard to secure these. So we've gotten bids here to do the work, and we'll be waiting on parts to arrive, but we wanted to get the consent to move forward, but know that we're not choosing to be hot, but we are waiting on parts, and with the age of some of our units, they're having to order them and really figure some things out to keep us cool.
Thank-
Yes, sir? This one, the practice gym, and the classrooms are functioning, it's just during the
It's like-
heat of the day.
And Board
Like-
President, Johnson, members of the board, it might be, as of right now, 2 classrooms. The issue is the unit in the room is functional, but when it was hitting above 96, above 96, I guess was having to work too hard. So right now that the temperature has dropped to a comfortable 102, they're a little more functional, and so the rooms are not as hot. However, we're going to utilize bond funds, and exactly, won't be seen, but it'll be felt, to replace some of the aging HVAC units. So we're fortunate enough to have the additional funds, the interest earned by Dr. Parker and her team of 1, to be able to utilize some of those additional funds to replace as many HVAC units as we can, as well as the safety and security upgrades here at the middle school and elementary school. She's a one-man band.
Yes, I am.
Harmonica, bass drum,
Playing all the instruments right now, Board President. The amendment in the board book.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, I turn it over to Dr.
Yes.
Stacy Parker.
So we didn't really need slides for this, but the last sheet in your board book is just an amendment request for Adam in the technology department for E-rate and so just what that means is that the funds are there and allocated. We're not giving additional funds. We're just moving for the function code. It actually falls under security upgrades, and so we're just wanting to create the appropriate budget code for the money. So the monies are there, and that form just gives us the go-ahead. Anytime you move from one function to the other, the board just has to give the okay to do so. Thank you.
Board President Johnson, this concludes the superintendent's report.
Okay. Do I hear any action on the consent agenda? Okay, it's been moved and second to accept the consent agenda as presented. All in favor? Say, okay, no one opposed. It's passed. And next, we'll adjourn at 6:12.